Blue chip team, what's going on? What's going on? Man, it's flying by. It is flying by. Um, this week we're going to talk about presentation mastery. Presentation mastery. How to run a clean F&A presentation. Not a dirty F&A presentation, but how to run a clean F&A presentation. So let me do a quick recap. All right. We had phase one. As a whole, phase one is weeks 1 through 13. There's 4 phases altogether. Phase one is weeks 1 through 13. We're on week 8. Phase one is broken down into 3 different sections. The first weeks 1 through 4, we talked about vision, we talked about standards, and we talked about culture in weeks 1 through 4. Week 1, we talked about vision and direction. Week 2, we talked about standards. Week 3, we talked about time and energy management. Week 4, we talked about communication and accountability. Week 5, we talked about Primerica's business model. Week 6, we talked about licensing strategy. Week 7, we talked about recruiting systems. And week 8, which is now, we're going to talk about presentation mastery. We're going to talk about presentation mastery. So today we're talking about F&As. F&As, financial needs analysis. Not fast F&As, not sloppy F&As, but clean F&A. So a clean F&A builds trust. It creates clarity and leads to decisions. A messy F&A creates confusion and it creates objections. So if you're getting a lot of objections, you got a messy F&A. So most deals don't die from price. They die from poor fact finding. So what is a clean F&A? A clean F&A means proper discovery, it means accurate numbers, and it also means client understanding and clear recommendations. All right. So this is what a clean F&A is not. A clean F&A is not rushing, is not guessing. A clean F&A is not filling in the gaps for yourself. Is not turning it into a sales pitch. All right. Think of this phrase, which is commonly used, but think of this phrase when you think of an F&A. Garbage in, garbage out. So the key is to ask better questions, which means you'll get better answers. And with better answers, you'll get better solutions. Better answers equals better solutions. So the first thing to do is to set the frame first. Set the frame first. All right. So before you ask any questions, you want to say this. Okay. Prepare the client. I'm going to ask you a few questions so I don't waste your time. Just let them know. I'm going to ask you a couple questions so I don't waste your time. And that's real. And then I'll show you options and let you decide what makes sense. Fair enough. And most of the time they're going to say, fair enough. Let's get it rolling. So if you don't frame the process, the client controls it. They're going to control the whole process. So what are some core F&A questions, right? Now you can refer to your playbook. However, right now, I'm going to give you some examples here. I'm just going to give you some examples, but please refer to your blue chip playbook. So let's start with the household basics, right? We need to know the ages, right? We need to know the ages. We need to know marital status, and we also need to know dependents. And the next is income. About how much you bring home monthly, we got to ask that question. After we tackle income, the next set of questions are in the category of protection, right? It's in the category of protection. Do you currently have life insurance? Right? That's a great question to ask. Who's the carrier? Let's find out who's the carrier if they do. How much is the amount every month? If you had to guess, most people, they may not know, right? But if you had to guess, is it through work or is it private? After we work through the protection questions, now we move to the debt questions, and don't skip over this part because all of it is important. It has to flow. So how much do you owe on your mortgage? All right, they have a home. Any car loans, credit card debt, student loan debt. Maybe they live in an apartment, but still ask them if they got a mortgage. Maybe they got a mortgage somewhere else. So now we move into the goals. You want to ask them, if something happened tomorrow, what would you want to take care of first for your family? The key with the questions is this. You want to do more listening than you're talking. That's a big one. Because sometimes we can get in, we want to talk. But we got to use these two right here. So listen more than you talk. Next, we have to dig a little deeper. We ask those questions, but those questions, we got to dig a little deeper. So this is where the clean F&As are won. You want to do some follow-up to the questions that I just mentioned. Some follow-up to them. So it's important that you be creative, all right, with this part and not repetitive. Don't be repetitive with this part. Be creative. So some examples of follow-up questions are this. Remember, you asked those questions I mentioned, but now you want to follow up those questions. You want to say something like, tell me a little bit more about that. How long has that been a concern? And what happens if nothing changes? See, excuse me, surface answers don't close cases. Emotional clarity does. So after you have framed the question, you dug deeper on the questions, the next thing that you want to do, which is very important, you want to summarize back to the client what they said to you. Because it's good for them to hear what they just said to you, just in case you missed something. So you can say, okay, so what I'm hearing is, and then you want to repeat back the answers they gave you. After you repeat it back, simple thing to ask, hey, did I miss anything? Sometimes they may have come up with some things as you're saying it back. So people buy what they feel understood about. So after you gather the information, now it's time to transition to solutions. And you can simply say this. All right, this is how you transition into the solutions. You can simply say, so based on what you shared, here's what makes sense. Then you present to them your solutions based on their answers. Okay? Never present before summarizing, and never present without permission. All right, so if you look in your playbook, you look in the case, how to handle a case, how to prepare for a case, it's all in there. So when you present options, you want to present 3 options. Not 2, not 1, not 5 options, but 3. Always have the primary option, have the budget option, and then have a backup option. Then you want to walk them through each of those options. All right. The last step is to ask for the decision. And I've been in this industry for a while, and some I struggled with before. But many people do all the steps, but never ask for the decision. And a simple way to ask for the decision is to say something similar to this right here. So are we protecting just you or the whole family? Or you can say, which option works better? See, the key here to not feel any type of way about that is if you ran a clean F&A, closing is going to feel natural. So it's very important that you run a clean F&A. Follow the system that we've laid out. So let me real quickly go through some common mistakes people make when doing an F&A. You want to jot a couple of these down just to make sure that you don't do it. And, you know, I'm definitely guilty of this. I have them jotted down, but I still sometimes do them. So, but let me run through the list. Talking too much, skipping the debt questions, guessing income, assuming priorities, not summarizing what they told you, and presenting too early. Always remember, shortcuts create objections. And here's just a compliance reminder, right? Use the client words. Never yours. Never fill in blanks. Full disclosure always, and let the client decide. Clean F&As, they protect your license. So team, success in Primerica comes from discipline. So you want to, slow down a little bit, ask better questions, run clean F&As. See, professionals diagnose, amateurs have a pitch. We diagnose, we don't have pitches. Sometimes brand new people in the business will say, okay, what's the pitch? How do you pitch? Or even when you hit the client, right? They'll say, okay, you'll go through some stuff and they'll say, okay, what's your pitch? And they'll say it kind of like sarcastically, right? But don't do that. We don't do that. We diagnose first. So we went through presentation mastery, week 8. Now, weeks 9 through 13 is very important because we're going to talk about duplication basics. From weeks 9 through 13, it's all about duplicating yourself. That's how you become free in this type of industry, in this business. That's how you become free. So weeks 9 through 13, we're going to talk about duplication basics. Week 9, which is next week, we're going to talk about duplication philosophy. Week 10, we're going to talk about training others to train. Week 11, we're going to talk about coaching versus managing. Week 12, we're going to talk about tracking and scoreboards. Week 13, we're going to talk about quarterly review, what worked and what didn't. All right. And then that'll be the end of phase 1. And then we'll move into phase 2. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as we complete weeks 9 through 13, which is duplication basics. We just finished week 8, presentation mastery. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. Man, let's stay focused. Blue Chip Dynasty. If you haven't got your license, get your license. If you already got your life license, let's start thinking about getting that investment license. Let's make sure we attend the trainings. Let's make sure we attend our one-on-one leadership development with your field trainer, and let's keep it moving. Let's keep it going. Talk to you guys later.